Hey guys, welcome to my channel Lush Foliage. I hope you guys are fine and are safe. So guys, today I'll be discussing about a very simple plant, easy to take care, low maintenance, non-fussy plant. Now guys, this plant, the scientific name is Tradescantia Pallida, or commonly known as the purple heart plant. Yes guys, this plant also belongs to the variety of Tradescantia. We had earlier spoken about this plant and the other varieties. So this plant also belongs to the Tradescantia variety. Now basically this is a trailing plant. It tends to trail downwards. So if you want to use it as a trailing planter, you can use this plant. It tends to give a very beautiful purple touch to your garden. Now basically a lot of times our gardens are completely filled with greenery. There is a lot of green plants. So if you want to break the monotonous color and you want to add a little dash of color to your garden, then this is one of the plant you can add. So this plant does not require a lot of fertilizers. It does not require a lot of watering, but there are certain things that you need to keep in mind, and that's what we are going to be talking about. Now guys, talking about the soil has to be loose, porous and well draining, but at the same time there should be a very slight moisture in the soil, but not soggy wet soil. If your plant is going to be sitting in soggy wet soil, then the stem of this plant will start turning soft and it will eventually start to rot. So ensure that you have a well draining soil. The water should drain out immediately, but yet there should be slight moisture in the soil. I have the soil mix video. I have put the link in the description below. You can check it out. You can use that same soil for your purple heart. Now guys, talking about the light, now you can place this in indirect bright light or you can give it full sun. Now if the plant is mature, if the plant has been well acclimated, it can even take a good amount of afternoon sunlight for a couple of hours. But guys, if you're a beginner, please don't expose it to afternoon direct sunlight, otherwise the leaves will start to burn. So to be on the safer side, either you give indirect bright light or give morning direct sunlight for 5 to 6 hours. Now guys, if you are placing it indoors, then ensure that the plant receives a good amount of bright light. Otherwise, what's going to happen? If there is lack of light, the stems will start to stretch and you will not be able to get that intense purple color, because when it lacks sunlight, the color on the leaves will start to revert to green. It will have more of green than the purple. So in case if you are growing this plant for the purpose of that purple color, which is beautiful, then you'll have to give it a good amount of morning direct sunlight for 5 to 6 hours. Now guys, talking about watering, as I said, the soil has to have slight moisture but not soggy wet soil. Now when you are getting a cutting, or if you're growing this plant from a cutting, ensure that you take a cutting of at least 4 to 5 inches. Do not go for a very small cutting, otherwise it won't be able to adapt in the new environment. Now another important thing, the watering also depends. Now if you are growing a very small plant that is not well established, then you will have to maintain a good amount of moisture in the soil. Do not let the soil dry out completely, otherwise the new cutting will not be able to grow properly. So once you happen to see there is new growth, there are new shoots, you also tend to see there are a lot of flowers. Now this indicates that the plant is completely established. Now over here, if you do not water the plant for 2 to 3 days, once it's become mature, it's absolutely fine. There is nothing to be worried, because the plant becomes very strong. It becomes very hardy, and this plant tends to store a little bit of water in their leaves as well. So once the plant is well established, if the plant is mature, then you do not need to be worried much. If you're not going to water it for 2 to 3 days also, it's absolutely fine. But you have to be very careful if you are getting a new cutting, or if the plant is very small, not well established, then you need to take a little bit of care. Now talking about dormancy and non-dormancy, very soon this plant will go into dormancy, that is during the winters. Now guys, when I say dormancy, it doesn't mean that all the leaves are going to fall off. The plant will grow, but it is going to be very slow with its growth. So during this period of time, which is their dormancy period, do not do a lot of watering. If you can keep the soil dry, it's absolutely fine. They will still do well because they would be dormant. And please do not add any kind of fertilizers during the dormant period, which is the winter period. And during the summer period, that is their growing period, at that point of time, you can give them enough watering. You can even feed them with liquid fertilizers and they would be doing quite well. So basically during the winters, do not add too much of water and do not add fertilizers. And during the summer period, you can start watering it and giving it fertilizers in order for it to grow. Talking about pest attack, it usually does not get affected with pests, but again depends upon the environment. At times you might see mealybugs or spider mites, so you can treat it accordingly with any organic spray that you have been using. But otherwise, there is no much issue with pests. They usually do not get affected with pest or insects. They usually do quite well. There will be a lot of flowering that is going to happen during the summer period. At times they also flower during the winters, because a lot of us do not have a proper winter, so at times they also tend to flower. So basically the flowers are very small. They would be growing in between the brackets of the leaves. The flowers are very tiny. They are bright pink in color. They tend to grow in between these brackets of the leaves, and they do not last for a whole day. They tend to only last for a couple of hours, and then they tend to fade off. So not only the color of the foliage is beautiful, but the flowers are also very beautiful. Definitely not huge flowers, but very tiny. I think they must be probably 1 centimeter in size, and they're very tiny. But when the entire plant tends to produce the flowers, it looks very beautiful. But as of now, most of my flowers have bloomed off. So it was early in the morning they were completely open, but now they have completely closed off, so they just remain for a couple of hours. Another best thing about Purple Heart is that it's very easy to propagate. You can either propagate it with stem cuttings or with plant division. Now guys, I would always suggest you to go with a stem cutting, because if you want to divide a plant, then you have to take out the entire plant and separate it. So the best thing what you can do is just do a stem cutting. You don't even need a knife, you don't even need a cutter. Just with your hand you can just pinch the stem and it will break immediately. The stem is very soft, so it easily tends to break off. And the next thing what you can do is just take the stem and put it into the soil, and in this way you can propagate and multiply your Purple Hearts. So it's very simple. Now over here, as you can see, my plant was leggy because it was not receiving a lot of light, hence it started to stretch. So whenever you see something like this, all you have to do is just cut the stem, just pinch the stem and put it back into the pot. Now the pinching method is the best method, because what's going to happen with this is there are going to be a lot of new shoots that would be coming out. So this is the best way. If you have a hanging planter, if you want to put this plant and you want the plant to look bushy, then you just do the pinching method, and then in some time your entire hanging planter will get bushy with Purple Heart. So it's very simple. Even if you tend to find this on the roadside, if you tend to check with your friends or your relatives or neighbors, when you ask them for a cutting, ensure that you take a cutting that is at least more than 5 inches in size, so that it becomes easy for the plant to get adapted. So I personally love this plant a lot because it has a very unique color of foliage. Now guys, I love greenery, I love green plants, but at times you want to have little bit mix of colors, because when you have a lot of colors in your garden, it immediately tends to uplift your mind. It tends to completely change your mood, and that's whenever I get into my garden, when I see all these colorful plants, colorful foliage plants, it immediately changes my mind. It kind of relaxes and makes you very calm. So this is why I like a lot of bright color in my garden, and Tradescantia Pallida tends to do that work. So if you do not have this plant, I would highly recommend get one. You can check with your friends, your neighbors. I'm sure they will have a plant, and you can probably get a cutting that is around 5 inches and you can grow it. If you do not find it, you can even check it in any of the local nurseries. It will be available because it's a very common plant. So guys, I hope that this video was helpful to you. If it was, please hit the like button. If you're new to my channel, please consider subscribing to it. Until then, take care, stay safe and keep planting.